To just begin by welcoming you to the 3 Keys for Creating Social Change Without Divisiveness Masterclass. You know, because you signed up to attend, I'm guessing that you are a socially conscious person who has some great ideas about how to make the world a better place. So we're going to be talking about the ideas that you have right now. Let me show you this image that I created. It shows some of the causes that socially conscious people are standing up for. So I'm curious what you are feeling called to create. You know, what are you feeling called to change in the world? So you can either type it in the chat or go ahead and unmute yourself. And I would love to hear about, you know, maybe it's one of these things that you see on the slide, or maybe it's something else. Human rights, mental health. Thank you, Doreen. And how about you, Kate or Claudia? What? Okay, Claudia, equity in public education. Yes. Oh, that's so important. Yes. Kate, human rights, women's reproductive rights. Yes. So all of those are so important. I mean, they've always been important, but it seems like now, especially with the election coming up, we're hoping that we can get some people in power that are going to listen and make some of the changes that we're hoping to see. And you know, changes, I call people who create change makers. So I made a little slide to kind of illustrate this, because I've had a lot of people tell me, I don't understand what a change maker is. So here's the way that I describe it, because I believe it's really important for us right now to create heart-based systems and structures in society. And I call the people who are doing that change makers. And here's how I define it. So if you look at this illustration on the slide, there are some people that are just kind of satisfied with the way things are. They just accept the status quo of how systems and structures function, and they don't really feel a need to change anything. A person begins to become a change maker when they're no longer satisfied with the status quo. And then active change makers are not only dissatisfied with the status quo, they also begin to take action to create new and different ways of doing things. So I'm curious, do you see yourself as a change maker? And if you do, go ahead and type a yes in the chat. Great. Doreen does. Claudia, yes. Kate, yes, awesome. I figured you were probably change makers, or you wouldn't have been drawn to join this master class. What I have noticed, though, is that challenging the status quo can really create and cause some divisiveness. So I'm curious, why don't we go ahead and unmute ourselves just so we can hear each other's voices right now for this part of the call. And I'd like for you to tell me, what are some of the examples of divisiveness that you've seen show up or that you've experienced yourself? And think about also what problems it has caused when divisiveness has shown up. Kate, do you have an example that you'd like to share?
I guess family divisiveness.
Yeah. Yeah, that can happen. And that's so sad when that happens. Thank you for sharing that. How about you, Claudia?
For me, it's divisiveness between the families and the educators.
Ah, yes. Oh, yeah, I bet. I bet
When parents are actually wanting to exercise their rights, or they find this new empowerment, then the educators do not really know how to take that and take it more as a aggression than as something that is positive. Is going to make even in the long run, even their work easier. It's just more of a, so it's a fight between you and me, and not, it's like something that we can do together to just better the system as a whole.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Definitely.
I'd say mine is more around, because of the work that I do, inner work around being a psychologist. It feels like the divisiveness is the inner conflict of how we speak to ourselves,
Yeah,
self-talk, or what, however we frame it,
yeah,
voices,
definitely.
critical
you.
voices.
Yeah,
I can see that like from the way that we're used to things being kind of like social status quo norms, like what am I supposed to do? Like in my case, as a parent, what am I supposed to do? What is my role? Where do I stand? And then where I want to be, and me having that same that fight within of uh like, do I need to do more? Even educators wanting to take a step in a different direction and thinking about how it's always been this way and why, how can I mm, go in a different directions and not even knowing how to go about it. It's definitely an internal battle as well.
yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And you bring up such a good point, Claudia, about there's so many times that we hear, and sometimes maybe we think it too, about, it's always been this way, and that can just be so it's true that it has always been this way, or it seems like it. And that doesn't mean that there's not a need for change. So thank you all for sharing those comments. I really appreciate that. What I've noticed is that divisiveness can lead to burnout and strained relationships. You guys, Claudia, you were talking about between families and educators, and Kate, you were talking about a family, and I'm guessing that probably relates to strained relationships as well. And that can be really hard when a person is trying to change something in society, and you've got all this divisiveness and strain and burnout and things like that happening. I'd like to tell you a little bit about my story and why I started doing the work that I do. So my name is Tamara Hurl, and I'm CEO of Wild Divine Coaching and Retreats. Today, I really love my life because I live on 9 acres in Colorado, and it's such a beautiful piece of property. There's a creek that runs all the way through it, and whenever I want to, I can go out and sit by the creek. And it really calms my mind. And if I've been experiencing divisiveness, it helps me just kind of let go of that and kind of reclaim my serenity. And when I'm not sitting out by the creek, I get to work with beautiful people like you. So I'm so blessed. But it hasn't always been that way. 8 years ago, I was experiencing a lot of divisiveness when I worked at a mental health center that had very toxic productivity expectations. I did my best to keep up because I wanted to, because I wanted to do a good job. But soon I just noticed that there really wasn't a way to keep up and do everything that they were asking me to do. So I kept telling my supervisor that I wasn't keeping up, and she kept saying, just do the best you can. And then after 3 months had passed, one day the head of the department walked into my office and said, you need to stay tonight until you get caught up with everything. So I had 3 months of paperwork that I mean, I had done the best I could, but there was a lot that still was undone. And she said, you need to stay here until you get that finished. So I was just shocked. I didn't quite know what to do. I was stunned. And so my first response was just to cry. And I called my husband, told him what was going on. And so it ended up that they didn't actually make me stay until I finished that night. But I knew that I was in trouble and I needed to do something to try to keep up with these expectations. So I worked really hard and I thought about what might help things get better. And I created a new and revised schedule that would allow me to work more efficiently and still have, not be working all kinds of crazy hours to try to keep up. So I was very excited and I took the new schedule and I showed it to my supervisor and the department head. And I thought, oh, surely they'll go for this, but they didn't. They said, you can't do this. Something like this needs to come from us. So again, I was stunned and shocked, and it felt so divisive. I felt like, it was an us versus them. We have the power to control your schedule. You have no control over it. So it was very hard for me to be positive and to show up the way that I wanted to in the workplace. And eventually I just ended up leaving because I couldn't show up the way that I wanted to, because I just couldn't let go of that feeling that it was unfair and unjust. I tried working at a couple of other mental health facilities and in the similar in the state and similar parts of the state. But I noticed that they also had kind of toxic productivity expectations. And so finally, I just got to the point where I had to make a decision. And I thought, well, I should just go out on my own. But I was really afraid to do that because I felt like, oh gosh, I didn't know if I could make it on my own. I was really worried about kind of, I had this need for approval from the establishment. And I didn't really trust my spiritual authority. I felt like there were better ways of doing things, but I wasn't sure. I just had some doubt. But then I kept working with that. And then I kind of discovered a higher truth of what was needed. I realized that I really needed to do some inner work so that I could really grow and kind of step into and claim my authority and create systems that would work better. And that's kind of what I realized and why I started doing this work, because I realized that I needed to just work with other change makers, because I thought if I've been experiencing the divisiveness and unhealthy work environments and cultures, there's probably other people that have been having the same thing happen, and I wanted to support them. And I thought there's probably people that have gotten to the point that I got to, where they're like, no, I just want to create my own system. And so that's why I started doing the work that I do. And so today I'm going to show you how you can rise above divisiveness by reclaiming 3 key aspects of yourself so that you can do your work as a change maker with more energy, more momentum, and more success. And I'll tell you about an opportunity to take the work deeper if you're interested. I also have a really special gift for those of you who are able to stay for the whole time. So I hope you'll be able to stay. What I've noticed is that divisiveness can really happen on many different levels. It can be both external and, as Doreen said earlier, internal, kind of that internal conflict. Divisiveness can really happen inside of you. And that's what was happening with me when I first began working at that mental health center. I tried to comply with the expectations because I'm kind of a workaholic, which most companies love. And also I have kind of this good girl syndrome going on. So I wanted to do a good job, but it didn't take long until there was like a rebellious part of me that really started speaking up and saying, this just isn't right. So those 2 parts of me were just doing battle with each other. And it was really challenging for me. So I'm curious if you have noticed that divisiveness is happening inside of you and kind of how that shows up. So let's see if one person could maybe unmute and share, and then you could also type it in the chat. But let's kind of have some discussion here about what happens when divisiveness shows up inside of you. What does that feel like? Confusing. Yeah, definitely very confusing. You might not even have thought of it as divisiveness. Okay, Kate, thank you. Not sure what you mean. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I was just getting ready to make that comment. Yeah, so divisiveness inside of you, like look at this slide that I've got up here. And we're going to be talking more about this in a minute. It's like when we all have parts inside of us. I bet you have found yourself thinking, gosh, a part of me would really like to do this. And then you have another part that says, no, I don't want to do that. Yeah, and Claudia, you typed an excellent definition. It feels like I'm fighting with myself. Yes, definitely. That's what it is. So what is it when have you noticed that you're fighting with yourself? When does that show up for you? Claudia says, something tells me to just leave it alone, and something that tells me no way. Right. Yeah. That's probably that change maker part of you that says, no, I can't leave this alone. Is that right, Claudia? Can you unmute yourself and tell us a little bit about that? I'd love to hear more.
Yes. So when it comes to the work that I do, again, I work with educators and families very equally. So part of the job that I do is training educators to be engaged with families, right? To build those authentic relationships that are going to lead to student overall success, not just academic success, but overall success. And the other part of it is uh, building relationships with the parents themselves, and again, and empowering them to become those advocates for their children, right? And many of the times that just clashes, those worlds just clash. Like it's not, but ideally, right? And in theory, it all seems like it is going to work out. You know, a parent knows they're right, or a parent knows like what they should do when a certain situation arises, like they feel their child shouldn't be in this kind of setting in school. Let's say it's special ed, you know, they should be in another setting. And you know, I empower them to say, well, you know, these are the steps that you need to take. You need to ask for an ARD, ask for it in writing. They have 45 days to, you know, to do that, and to actually give you an ARD. And so I'm giving them all this empowerment. And then, but at the same time, I'm also trying to work with the school system and telling them, you know, this parent wants to support their child and wants to understand why is it that it's gonna or not happen. And many times the school is like, oh, this translation is like this parent is just looking for trouble. And you know, we don't have the resources, and this is just more on us. And you know, so I'm caught like between a rock and a hard place of like, but you know, this is her right. But if we work together, and if there are really no resources, then what can we do together to get more of the resources that we need? Because if we just keep pushing parents away, it's not going to change the outcome. But if we start listening to parents and bringing them into those tables where they can actually understand, well, you know, this is why, this is how it works, then they can be the change makers themselves, because this is personal. They're
Right.
going to want to, you know, move it. So I don't know if I just went on a tangent there, but
That's
yeah.
okay. No, thank you. But I could hear some divisiveness, yeah, because yeah, the systems are saying we don't have the resources. Yeah, and there's so many different you know, there's the families, there's the you in the middle, there's the system, all trying to work together. And sometimes it can feel like they're fighting with each other and not on the same page. So thank you for sharing that example. Great. All right, let me show you the next slide here. See if I can go back to the right place. Yeah, so divisiveness can happen inside of you. And when that happens, here's the first key to help you rise above divisiveness. And that is when you reclaim what I call your wild nature. Wild nature. Okay, so part of reclaiming your wild nature involves releasing the need to conform. I mean, I know that sometimes we need to follow the rules, but sometimes the rules don't make sense anymore. So, and you might feel really torn between being authentic and conforming. So that's an example of internal divisiveness. So I hope that answers your question, Kate. It's sort of like, yeah, there's part of me that wants to, I really want to be authentic. I really think this is really what needs to happen. No, the other part says, no, I don't want to make waves. I don't want to cause problems. It's probably going to, you know, they're going to come back on me. So it can really, you know, it's just like you've got these two parts inside of you that are really doing battle with each other. So, and I'm guessing that you have experienced this because you are working to try to make things better in the world. One thing that often happens is that internal divisiveness can happen when your internal critic or your inner critic speaks up. That's a part of you that, you know, says, oh, you're not doing this right, or things are never going to change. That would be a good example of something that the internal critic comes up with. And so part of reclaiming your wild nature is to learn to tame your inner critic and just to notice when that fighting with yourself is happening. I'm going to tell you a quick story about a change maker that I know who was able to rise above divisiveness, internal divisiveness, that fighting with herself. And what happened was she was the CEO of a prominent legal firm, and she really wanted to change instead of having the top-down management style, she wanted to create shared leadership. And so what she did was she talked to me, and I designed some team building experiences in nature where they could practice taking turns being the leader, because that's what it was all about. And what she noticed when she tried to do that was not so much when we were doing the team building, but in the office, she kept noticing that whenever she would try to tell somebody, whenever she would try to delegate tasks, there was another part of her that kept saying, no, if you can do this, you need to just do it yourself. So she kind of had some people-pleasing behavior going on. And it was really a struggle for her, but doing the tasks together in nature gave her a chance to practice that. And she was finally able to rise above that to the point that she was delegating enough that she was able to open a branch in another state, which she really wanted to do. So I was so excited when she was able to do that. So I'm curious if you ever find it hard to break free from conformity, or if your inner critic ever holds you back. And think about that. Do you have an inner critic that gets triggered sometimes? And if so, what is it that triggers that? Maybe you can type it in the chat if you can think of something. Kate, I think this is the issue. Is this a teachable moment or not? I can make myself feel authentic and stand up, but then see how others do this, and it accomplishes nothing. Just makes other person disconnected and feel judged. Yes, Kate, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and when we feel judged, then there's like a protector part of us. We get defensive, and then it's really hard. That's when divisiveness starts happening, is when we feel judged. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So when I'm working one-on-one with clients, what I really help them do is to reclaim their wild nature by diving deep to really discover the childhood wounds and beliefs and messages that drive unhelpful behaviors like people-pleasing and internal criticism. And then they can come up with innovative solutions to create the changes that the world needs right now. I want to come over here to the chat because you are typing some great things in here. So Claudia says, ruffling the wrong feathers and creating barriers. Yes, that's so hard to overcome that, because it can create problems for us. I know once I ruffled feathers at the place where I was working, I kept getting passed over for promotions. Amber says, wondering if it's right. I hear too many opinions. I become discouraged. Yes, I can relate to that. Yeah, it can be discouraging and confusing when you hear so many different opinions. So thank you for sharing that. Kate says, it's not a lack of courage, it's a lack of knowing how to handle effectively. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Can you unmute yourself, Kate? I want to hear a little bit more about that. I'd love to hear you say more about that.
I've seen it where somebody in a social situation sort of speaks up and says, whoa, something like, did you mean what you just said, or something like that. And I can't explain how it happened, but I saw it just not work, break down a relationship, and it wasn't effective. And I said, it's not that you're not willing to take those slings and arrows. It's more like, I wonder if it's helping anybody,
Right.
especially in situations where you're the person that has the privilege and somebody's referencing somebody who doesn't. And it's like, wait a second, slow down here. I'm not sure that's really kind of like, I can't explain it right, but it's like they're not thinking it all the way through maybe. And you go, whoa, and the other person feels like I've got to defend what just came out of my mouth. And I'm not talking about people who are deeply evil people. I'm talking about people that really aren't, and then they say something that sort of lands wrong, and it's like it
Mm.
just ends up not being constructive and not accomplishing anything really useful. Just and then this whole thing of it kind of plays into the stereotype of, oh, you just want to, look good, or what's performative.
Mhm.
You see what I mean? It just devolves. Like none of this was intended, but it ends up nothing got accomplished except maybe the person who one might think want to examine what they're saying isn't really examining what they're saying. Their defensive hackles are so far up, they're just pissed at
Mhm.
everybody that's
Yep.
calling them out. Now all there
Yep.
is about what the person calling them out, though, you see what I mean? It gets to be
Yep.
about not what the issue was at all.
Yep.
And at the same time, it sounds easy to criticize somebody that did that. It's like, well, do I know what I would say in the exact situation? And I have been in situations where I have said something. Just from the I perspective, if this continues, I won't continue to be here. I'm not comfortable. So I'm not talking about them. I'm just talking about that's what it's doing to me. Is that what you want? Is that what you're trying to accomplish here in this social situation? So
Mhm.
I can just say, I've excused myself. And I have excused myself.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? It's the thing of what is the effective way to do it? I think that's the question. I'll leave it there.
Okay, that's a great question. Hopefully the next slide and the ones after that will answer your question. If not, we'll have time at the end and we'll talk more. How does that sound? Thank you for clarifying and for saying more. Okay. Well, so let me talk about, we'll come back to your question and hold on to that, Kate. And if the slides don't answer your question, be sure and we'll talk about it more at the end. Because I want to make sure I share the rest of what I want to share. So in addition to divisiveness happening between people, it can also happen between us and the divine. So I'm going to use the word divine. You might use the word God, you might use the word creator or universe, use whatever word makes sense to you. But I think this is really important. And I think this is something that people probably haven't really thought too much about, but it's very important. So for example, when I was working at the mental health center and things came to a head, and I just I noticed that I was really feeling like a victim. I didn't understand. I felt like, why did the divine place me in this situation where it feels like there's no way that I could win? So I felt really disconnected from the divine. I felt like the universe wasn't on my side. But when I persisted and tried to understand what was going on, I was able to tap into divine inspiration. That's when I came up with that idea of creating the new schedule. And it was brilliant. It would have been such a good schedule if they only would have let me do it, because it was not only did it made it more likely that I could meet their expectations, it also made it so that I could be more productive. And then I wouldn't have to, skip lunch or stay late and just give up work-life balance. So I was connected with the divine, and then I was able to come up with innovative solutions. So that's one way you can solve challenges whether it's between people or between you and a system, is just to get in touch with the divine. I call it reclaiming your divine nature. And that's key number 2. It's really helpful when you can get access to and just really reclaim your divine nature so that you can rise above divisiveness that you encounter as a change maker and a socially conscious person. Reclaiming your divine nature, like I said, it can help you find innovative solutions. And it's just important for us not to see ourselves as separate from the divine, because when we do this, we give away our spiritual authority. And I believe it's really time for us to reclaim that. A simple way to do that is just to ask yourself questions like, here's a couple of questions you can ask yourself. The first one is, how can I align with the universe to co-create? And then I'm just going to say blank. So fill in the blank. So how can I align with the universe to co-create this education system, this situation between my brother and I, this situation with these parents. So how can I align with the universe to co-create a solution that's going to serve everyone's needs? That's the first question. And the second one is more about yourself. And that you can ask yourself, how can I, or who do I need to become in order to create what I'm trying to create here? So who do I need to become? And the universe will help us become who we need to become. Once when I was working at another organization, I want to illustrate how you can reclaim your divine authority, your spiritual authority, and really strengthen your connection, reclaim your connection with your divine nature. So this organization that I was working for was going through a lot of changes. They're rapidly changing, and people at all levels of the organization were struggling. And I noticed that. Now, I could have told myself, I'm not in HR. Why should I? That's their problem. But I was fortunate enough to be in mid-level management, so I had a little bit more freedom with my time. I saw a problem. I knew I could help change it. So I created this 12-week program where we invited creativity and spirituality into the workplace. This slide that you see is an example of one of the projects that we did. And I said, well, who am I not to do this? I see a problem, I can help change it. And it did help change it. One of the things that people were struggling with was keeping up with their paperwork, so productivity. And after we did the 12-week program, for many people, their productivity improved. And not only that, it also helped the organization win an international award for bringing spirituality into the workplace. So it was great. That was win-win. So me being able to reclaim my divine authority and partner, co-create with the universe helped everybody. And that's what we need as change makers. And that's what we need to rise above divisiveness, because the project, I made sure that we confronted divisiveness when it happened. Not only did they talk about what was wrong, they also were expected to come up with solutions too. So I think that's how I was able to get HR to approve me offering that project. So I'm curious, I'd love it if you could type in the chat, when do you find yourself feeling disempowered and disconnected from your spiritual authority? And what triggers that? Or maybe the opposite. Maybe you'd like to share an example of a time when you co-created with the universe. Love to hear some stories about that. Doreen says, overwhelmed when not connected. Yep. Yeah, definitely overwhelmed can really get in the way of being kind of dizzy. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Doreen. So in my one-to-one sessions with people, I really focus on helping them let go of beliefs that create separation between themselves and the divine. I really help them step into their power as co-creators with the universe so that they can rise above divisiveness. So I'm going to move on to the next key. Okay, and we kind of been talking about this already. Divisiveness, of course, can happen between you and other people. When I was working at the community mental health center, I felt a lot of divisiveness between myself and the administration. And, excuse me, and there were even some times when I engaged in divisive behavior. I kind of complained to the other clinicians instead of trying to come up with a solution. And I just refused to work overtime, but that didn't solve anything. It just created more divisiveness. So another key, the third key to rising above divisiveness is just reclaiming what I call your true nature. What I wished I would have known then was how to tap into my true nature, which I'm going to tell you how to do in just a few moments, because when you can do that, it can really help you create the kind of change that you long to create without burning yourself out or creating more divisiveness or creating enemies, getting written up and things like that can happen when we're in these challenging situations. There's a really helpful model of therapy and coaching that is called internal family systems or parts work. And it's very helpful when you're excuse me, when you're coming up against divisiveness. The people who created internal family systems believe that each one of us has at our core a kind of energy that drives us to do good things and be helpful towards other people. So in the center of this image, you'll see the word self. So they call that energy self with a capital S. At your core, you are self. All of us are. And when we're tuned into self and operating from that place, it's so helpful. Then we can show up. It helps us, Kate, when you were talking about those, people just end up, everybody gets mad and defensive. When we can all tap into self energy, we can rise above that. So, and there are 8 qualities that help us know when we're dialed into and operating from self energies, and they're listed here on the slide: compassion, calmness, courage, curiosity, clarity, caring, connection, and creativity. You can use self energy to really, for lots of different things. One of the things you can use it for is to imagine beyond the status quo of an existing situation, like something that's always been that way. And you're trying to think, yeah, I'd like to do something different, but I have no idea what. When you tap into self energy, you'll get downloaded with ideas of ways to do new things. That's what happened with me when I was stuck with that. You got it, you've got this, we're going to fire you if you can't keep up with these expectations. Self energy helped me rise above that. It also, self energy helps you see the common ground. When somebody's being defensive, you're trying to create a change and the system is being defensive, or another person is being defensive, it helps you see the common needs that you and the other people have. So I love being able to tap into self energy, and that's one of the things that I really, really love helping people do. I want to tell you a quick story about my client, Drea, who was a change maker. You're going to love this, Claudia, because she works in education. And she saw some things that weren't working in the school system. She's a first grade teacher. And so she was telling me about it. And I helped her create this image that you see on the slide here. And it really helped her to embody self energy, so that if you look at the image, it looks kind of, there's like scribbles all over. It looks like lots of stuff going on. Yes, she was feeling so overwhelmed. She was even thinking about leaving her career because she was just so overwhelmed. But creating this image helped her tap into self energy so that she could really get clarity about what she needed. And she started looking around and she realized that she needed more support. So she looked for examples. Where do I need support? She noticed that her reading group was really struggling. In most classrooms, the reading groups are broken down into 2 different sections. But she said, I really need 4. My kids are at 4 different levels in reading. So she could have been divisive and just gone and complained about the system and said, this stinks. But no, instead, she tapped into self energy and she went to the administrator and she said, I need 4 reading groups. And luckily, she is blessed enough to be in a system where they said, okay, let's do let's find out what needs to happen. Let's do it. We'll get 4 reading groups for you. So they brought in another person that could help her so that she could have 4 reading groups in her classroom. And that is so important because now it's win-win for everyone, because her students are getting the support that they need. She's feeling supported, and those kids are learning the basic skill of reading, which is foundational to everything they're going to be doing for the rest of their lives. So that's just a great example of how tapping into self energy can really help when you're facing divisiveness and challenges as a change maker. So I'd like to pause now and just ask you when you have been able to tap into self energy. Think about those 8 C's that I was talking about. When have you felt calm and curious? When have you felt compassionate when you're trying to create change? When have you come up with a really creative idea and found courage to speak up, even if another part of you was worried about making waves? Or when did you feel really caring and connected and have great clarity? See if you can think of a time when you tapped into self energy. And you can either type it in the chat, or if somebody wants to unmute, we've got some time and I'd love to have a little discussion about this. And if you're not sure what it means, we can talk more about that too.
I'd like to say, when I do my work, I feel like I go to that place that you're talking about and I listen from there. Because I'm not judging, I'm not having an agenda, I'm not trying to make somebody do something. I'm really trying to bring out what's inside of them that they can hear more of inside of themselves, kind of, I guess you could say. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's the listening that's so far away from any kind of you should do this kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a perfect example, Doreen. And I've seen you do that. So yeah, you're definitely tapping into self energy when you do that. Sometimes we can tell we're in self when we're just when we are just calm and we don't feel like we have to fix somebody else. We have empathy for them, but we're not sympathy, and we have compassion. And we're trying to help them come up with their own solution, and not because we want to empower people. So that's when we're tapped in and dialed into self energy. I think some of the things I have I don't know if you have this, but I have like a kind of like a fixer part that wants to come in sometimes and starts getting nervous about somebody's, they're like when I do therapy work, when someone has suicidal thoughts, sometimes I get that fixer part wants to come in. It's like, oh, so I notice that that pushes me out of self energy or covers up self energy sometimes. Yeah, and so this might be a new concept for you, but I really invite you to think about the self energy. And I'm so glad you're staying here, because I'll be sending you it's like a screensaver that you can put on your phone, and it has those 8 qualities. So you'll be able to just practice. Doing deep breathing can help you get into self energy. Thinking about trying to see the good in the other person, trying to think about their good qualities, focusing on love. Those are all things that can really help you get into self energy. And then you can create the kind of changes that we're needing in the world right now. So let me share the screen again. There's a few more things that I want to share with you. Okay, so we're going to, I want to just take a few moments to review what we've talked about so far. So we've talked about 3 key aspects, reclaiming 3 key aspects of yourself that will help you create social change without divisiveness. And they are to reclaim your wild nature, not needing to conform, your divine nature, staying connected with God and not seeing, or whatever word you use, and not seeing yourself as separate, and your true nature, just that caring part of you that's deep at your core. It's the essence of who you are. So if you put those all together, I call it reclaiming your wild, divine, true nature. So I would love it if you could think for a moment and just come up with a word or a sentence that describes what your biggest takeaway is, or what is standing out from what you've heard so far today.
So far, oh, I'm sorry, you said to text it. I'm
That's okay. You can say it. Go ahead and say it since you're unmuted. That's fine.
sorry. Yeah, I was gonna
No.
say is to, you said tap into your self energy.
Mhm.
I think that was the biggest takeaway that I've gotten. It's really good.
Great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here, Amber, and thank you for taking time to share that. I love that.
Thank you.
Liberatory. Doreen says, my inner wild divine nature. Nice. Claudia says, liberatory. Thank you so much. Kate, do you have a takeaway that you'd like to share? No pressure. It's not like I'm calling on you and going to shake my finger at you if you don't share. Just wanted to give you a chance if there's anything that you'd like to share. Compassion for the other person. Yes, that is so important. It can be hard to get there, but with practice, and especially when you learn to tame that inner critic, and also it's part of it, and I haven't really talked about this, but when we do healing of the parts of us that get defensive, then it's easier for us to have compassion for the other person and to show up the way that we want to. So in a few moments, I'm going to be asking you what other questions that you have. But before we go there, I'd like to switch gears for just a moment. First of all, I'd really like to thank you for your commitment, for being here today, and for making the world a better place. And hopefully now you feel more equipped to create social change without divisiveness, because you know how to reclaim 3 of the key, most important aspects of your nature. But sometimes we need support. Creating change can take time, and it can be a difficult journey to navigate because of the divisiveness and overwork and overwhelm and so many things that we come up with. So you might be wondering, gosh, could things go more smoothly for me if I had support? So I'm going to put up a slide that I think is really helpful. I want you to look at this list of behaviors and see if you engage in any of these. Because if you find that you are engaging in these, it's probably a sign that you could use some support. So if you see something that you find yourself doing, go ahead and type it in the chat if you would, please. Perfectionism, fear, yes. Procrastination, perfectionism. Yeah, thanks, Claudia. Amber says perfectionism. Kate says procrastination. Yes, I find myself doing these things too. So that's when I know I need to, my husband calls it therapize myself. It's when I start engaging in self-care. Yeah, so these are the things that let us know that that the change making has gotten hard and hard to manage. So what I would like to invite you to do is to book an empowered change maker breakthrough session with me. There's a QR code down at the corner of the slide that you can use so that you could book a meeting with me right now before class ends. And Doreen will also post the link for that in the chat. There it is. Thank you, Doreen. So that you could click on that if you prefer. The Empowered Changemaker Breakthrough Call is free. There's no obligation for you. I promise I'm not going to be trying to sell you something. I really just love supporting change makers, and I would love to make the work that you're doing go more smoothly and more easily, so that if there is divisiveness that shows up, you will know how to manage it. During our meeting, here's what we'll do. The first thing is I'm going to help you remember what your big dream is. Why did you start doing the work that you're doing? Because sometimes we can lose sight of that. And then I'm going to help you identify if you have parts that are blocking that. And by that, I mean, it's that internal divisiveness, that fighting within. Well, it's like a part of me wants to do this, but a part of me is like, a part of me wants to speak up, but a part of me is like, no, don't rock the boat. I'll help you figure out where that's happening for you so that you can identify that and know how to stop it, know how to manage it, know how to deal with it. I'll also help you create a plan to get all of your parts on the same page so that they're working with each other instead of fighting against each other. Because when you do that, then you can rise above divisiveness, whether it's within yourself, whether it's between you and someone else, or whether it's between yourself and the divine. So I would really love it if you would book a session with me. I would be so delighted to spend more time with you. There are also lots of other ways that I can support you. You are welcome to, I have a really fun Facebook group that's called Sacred Circle for Change, and it's a great group. I share inspirational thoughts and quotes, and other people share things. It's just a place where you can connect with other change makers and find support. And they know how hard it is to do the work that you're doing and to deal with divisiveness and things like that. I also have I have several different platforms. Like I post things on Instagram and LinkedIn, and I have a YouTube channel. So and there's a link. It's a link. Let's see. It's called Linktree, I think is what it's called. Claudia, thank you so much for joining us. I'm glad that you know that you have more control than you thought you have. Thank you so much for joining us. All right. I want to share with you a testimonial. This is Drea, the one that I was talking about earlier. She is the one that was able to get those extra reading groups in her classroom because she spoke up, and she said, Tamara helped me realize that my biggest stressor was the need for more support. My work as a change maker is so much better now that I have that. So before we go to question and answer here in just a minute, I want to just share this quote with you. I love it because, well, first of all, I love so much of the work that Ruth Bader Ginsburg did. And I thought this quote was so great because it really explains the most effective way to show up as a change maker. Fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so that I can see your faces. And I want to just open it up to whatever questions you have right now. Would love to find out more about the work that you're doing and what's challenging for you.
Looks like Kate's got something.
Hi, Kate. I'm glad you were able to come back and join us again. Let's go back to first. I want to make sure go back to that question that you were asking before. Did any of the information that I shared give you answers to that question that you had? Go ahead and unmute yourself if you would, please, so we can just have a discussion here.
Oh, I was more looking for like scripting, like sales training, like very specific. It's a different type of thing than, I mean, what you're talking about, and what you're talking about is interesting. It's just, I was coming at it from a different angle. That's all.
Okay. Well,
That's fine. It's been very interesting.
well, tell me about the work that you're doing.
Well, I live in Florida,
Okay.
so I'm in a very tiny minority of people that don't agree or support a lot of what's happening. So you have to be selective about how you express things, because it doesn't do any good to alienate all your neighbors and everyone that you're going to be living with moving forward. You know, and so you have to manage that. But with individual clients who are struggling with, my clients are elderly, a lot of times they're struggling with feelings of not being powerful or listened to begin with. But then when you add somebody who comes on loud with a different point of view politically, it's like, it's even more disempowering, I think, for them. So there's a lot of frustration. So I thought one of the reasons I enjoyed this evening is just to get some perspective, so that when they talk to me about stuff like that, like I fired my handyman because I couldn't take him anymore, or I had another one that I fired my pool guy because I feel frightened. I think he's so extreme that I'm frightened to have him. I'm by myself alone in the house. I just don't feel good about this. I think that it's more than a difference of opinion. I think it's not well. So when people are telling me these things, and I work as an organizer, so one of my roles is to coach people through, like, how are you going to resolve things that aren't getting done the way you want them, or you're not happy with your outcomes. What's a way to handle it, or what are some resources? So I think one of the things I could say is, well, here's a person who offers this type of coaching and support.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like what you do.
Yes,
I would appreciate. It's like that's a place you could go. For some people, I think it's gonna eat them up. I think they're, and I don't know what else is going on with them sometimes. But I think this is more than a casual upset, and when people are older, things can become, I've noticed as I've aged, it feels bigger. I guess it feels bigger.
Yeah. What would you say is, what would you say is the hardest thing about doing your job?
I can't think of anything hard. It's like, really, I'm very lucky. I do something I like with people I like. I mean, I can't.
Good. I'm glad.
I can't.
Yeah, it sounds,
of
one
it.
thing that I heard you say that that stood out for me is that I think I heard you say that it sounds like, or sometimes you wonder what else is going on. And
Yeah.
that it seems bigger than, yeah. Well, that, and that's one thing, that's a beautiful question. And when you are asking yourself that, you're tapping into self energy. And yeah, so if you just take some time, either in that moment, if you can, to just do some deep breathing and feel your feet on the floor, and you're likely to get an answer, because you'll be able to tap into self energy, and you'll be able to tap into what else is going on, and then you can really give them a suggestion that will empower them.
I think that the model is good, and I think that you're also trained as a mental health. I mean, you're a licensed mental health provider.
Right, I'm a licensed
I'm just
professional
thinking, there's
counselor.
somebody I can think of somebody that and I am not that. I've had a ton of organizers get a ton of mental health training, but we're not diagnosticians or anything. Our job is to recognize when more help is needed of a different kind. And
Mhm.
I'm thinking of somebody that over time I may conclude that might be, I'm thinking about, I think there's more under there that's causing this to be more troublesome. And I was thinking that you could be a resource that somebody could work with, that
Mm.
you work remotely. So, I mean, it wouldn't have to go somewhere. And so it's like, it doesn't necessarily sound like therapy. It doesn't sound like coming from a broken thing that you fix, but more like a shared community of people that are also, I could see that aspect perhaps with this one person.
Right.
I'm not ready to do it. I don't know her well enough yet, but I mean, I could see where she could benefit. And I think she would be very, she has mobility issues. I think that the remote or FaceTiming would be that would work. Like that would work really well for her, I think. Something like that.
Yeah, thank you for thinking of me, and thank you for doing the caring work that you do. And thank you for showing up for our meeting today. It was really a pleasure to meet you.
Well, I've enjoyed it, and it's definitely given me perspective. It's not what I thought I was going to get, but it's given me something else. So it all comes out of me. It's like, thank you.
Good. That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. I enjoyed meeting you.